Thank you, Senator Schatz. Senator Moran.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. With such short time and so many questions, I am reluctant to ask all of you to respond, so I would defer to you to respond who feels compelled to provide me an answer to my questions. I want to start with the USF High Cost Program. We worked with the Senate Appropriations Committee to include in FSGG language that would encourage the FCC to conduct a comprehensive assessment of what is needed, quote, what is needed to appropriately fund the high cost program to fulfill its statutory mandate for universal service. I support the short-term funding the FCC agreed to provide rate of return carriers to mitigate the immediate effects of the budget control mechanism. My question is, what is the current state of the assessment of this program, and what is the status of the short-term funds? We've had this conversation many times, but USF high cost is not receiving the dollars that it needs.
You left it open to everybody, so I'll pass that on to my colleagues. But no, Senator, I'll take the question. We do have an open proceeding. It was important to me because I heard your concerns and the concerns of carriers throughout Kansas that the budget control mechanism in particular was creating a lot of uncertainty. So as you know, we suspended that temporarily, issued an NPRM in March, and as I've committed here, we are going to work with our colleagues here and at the committee to make sure by the end of the year we have a rate of return system that provides that predictability and sufficient support that you require.
The chairman mentioned this in his comments, and I would join him in stressing to you the importance of this issue. Let me talk to maybe to Commissioner O'Reilly, who has been most vocal on this. We provided in the Farm Bill those barriers, those opportunities to narrow the scope of subsidizing places that already have a carrier, already have a service. What kind of interagency communications are already taking place between USDA, the FCC, and NTIA about bridging the digital divide?
I think the best answer by the chairman, who's had teams working on this. I'm not party to them.
We may spend more time deciding who's going to answer the question than I'm saying.
Senator, with respect to USDA, we have been actively collaborating. For example, I've spoken repeatedly with Secretary Perdue as well as the administrator of RUS, Fruits from Missouri, to figure out ways to make sure we're on the same page with respect to the $600 million that they're now distributing. We're also working together to make sure that our USF programs generally cohere, working with NTIA on a whole variety of issues to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to broadband deployment.
I'm not sure what Commissioner Rosenworcel was specifically addressing in her comments, but it caught my attention. Most recently, the CEO of Nextech Wireless in my hometown of Hays, Kansas, expressed support for extending the challenge process on the Mobility Fund Phase 2 auction based upon difficulties carriers and others are experiencing in collecting reliable data, urging the FCC to, quote, measure twice and cut once, before dispersing over $4 billion of resources. I've expressed a lot of concern about the initial eligibility map. I think it dramatically overstates existing unsubsidized coverage in my state, and looking at the map, my belief is it's elsewhere as well. You, Chairman Pai, met with me, and I appreciate that conversation along with Chairman Wicker and others. And one of my complaints then and now is that the FCC has put in place a map that is known to be flawed and expects others to fix the problem. That, to me, as I indicated previously, is not the way that government should work. My question is, what efforts beyond the challenge process is the FCC able, willing, or now doing to see that the map is righted before we cut twice and whatever that expression was, before that happened?
Thanks for the question, Senator. We inherited from the prior FCC a mess when it came to the map. We essentially asked every single carrier to report based on its own preferred technical parameters where they had coverage. Well, that wasn't good enough for me, and so I urged, and the FCC approved, bespoke data collection to make sure that we got based on the same technical parameters for every single carrier, show us where you have coverage. And then we overlaid all of those. And then on top of that, we said, now we're going to open it up for a challenge process, as you know. I'm pleased to report, as I mentioned to Senator Wicker, that we have adopted an order that extends by 90 days until November 28th, the time frame within which to promulgate a challenge. We also have extended waivers to the Kansas Farm Bureau, the Mississippi Farm Bureau, to elected officials like Senator Manchin, and to others to participate in that challenge process. Our Rural Broadband Auctions Task Force has put out a map showing just areas where there's one unsubsidized competitor to make it easier to target the areas that are ripe for challenge. We've also made it easier to we've essentially changed the buffer area to make it much easier to submit a challenge. So a variety of steps that we have taken have made it much easier than it was in January of 2017 when I came on board. But I agree with you. We should not be distributing this funding to parts of the country that are unserved if we don't know they're unserved. And that's what the entire goal of our new data collection is.
I think the answer that I hear you saying, Chairman, is that it still is the challenge process that will correct the map. There's nothing the FCC is currently doing or could do to take that task on itself.
Well, we've done a number of things. Our Rural Broadband Auctions Task Force has been in 9 states. We've been investigating on the ground as best we can. We don't have the personnel, the thousands of people that would be necessary to go around the entire United States. We've relied, as I said, on a wide variety of actors, private sector, state and local officials, and others to make those challenges.
I don't want to discount anything the chairman said. I agree that extending the deadline is a good idea, but I fundamentally agree with you that our maps are flawed. And over the next 10 years, we are going to distribute $4.5 billion to rural communities. If we get it wrong, they're going to pay a really big price. They're not get the funding, they won't get the funding they need. So in addition to extending it, and our process is really cumbersome. You've got to download all these data from the FCC, go onto their portal at USAC. You've got to get a variety of handsets, and then at half a kilometer distances, go and test signal strength and latency, upload it back, put it on a grid, get it certified by an engineer. It is difficult. We should be adding to this with our own efforts. We could do that if we took some of the FCC field offices and had them go out and did testing. We can ask our colleagues at the Universal Service Administrative Company, who are already planning on testing after the fact, to go out and also do spot checks. And then we can take advantage of our Measuring Broadband America program, where we've got like 200,000 consumers around the country who have downloaded a test to see if broadband is available through wirelessly in their communities, and see if we can exercise them to help us too, because the more data we get here to make it more accurate, the better off rural communities will be.
Thank you, Commissioner Rosenworcel, and please consider me an ally in any efforts to do that, to demonstrate how important this issue is and yet how wrong the process is. The Kansas Farm Bureau is taking it upon itself to go out and do the testing. I applaud them for doing that, but it doesn't seem like it's a responsibility of the Kansas Farm Bureau to correct a map developed by the FCC and information provided to it. Mr. Chairman, I would offer to you and to the ranking member, if I can help in any way to get the 5th commissioner confirmed in the United States Senate, I am interested in seeing that we have a 2nd Kansan serving on the FCC.
Hear, hear.